Continue with our Discernment of Spirits Mondays, and last time we began talking about Rule 3, which has to do with spiritual consolation. We began to make this distinction between non-spiritual consolations and spiritual consolations, right? I gave some examples of things that are just consoling and gifts from God, so just consolations, but that have no direct impact on our life of faith or in our pursuing of God's will, and so therefore we categorize those as non-spiritual consolation. So kind of to continue from that, a non-spiritual consolation can become a springboard for a spiritual consolation. So a non-spiritual consolation can become a spiritual consolation. It can begin to impact our life of faith and pursuing of God's will, and so it can become spiritual. So an example may be, maybe one is taking a leisurely walk, right, on a very beautiful, nice day, maybe like yesterday, and the weather is just perfect, and one is just really enjoying nature, and one feels just a sense of just peace and soaking it in and just rest, right? So far, a great consolation of this beautiful day, but at this point, it remains a non-spiritual consolation. Now, as you're taking this walk, then maybe just something hits you about the fact that it is God who's made all of this, who's gifted you this day. And so you maybe experience His presence, and you become keenly aware that He's there with you and has gifted you this day, so you could experience, in a way, Him through this creation that He's giving you, right? And so you begin to be filled with gratitude towards Him, towards God, and again, have this sense of awesomeness of who He is, and that He's really there with you. You begin to see how the change there from a just non-spiritual consolation to a spiritual consolation, something that begins to have an impact on your faith and in your pursuit of God's will. If you recall when we read Rule 3 completely last time, St. Ignatius gives a lot of concrete examples of how a spiritual consolation may take place, very specific things. And so one of the things that he said, we'll cover more in the next week, but one of the things that he says is that the soul becomes inflamed with love of God. So when a spiritual consolation takes place, often the soul becomes inflamed with love of God. And so let me read you just a passage that from this book that gives some examples. So, a woman attempts to pray with the Psalms and perseveres in the midst of distractions. Then she encounters a phrase that speaks to her heart and assures her that God is with her in her struggles. Her heart warms with a sense of love for her faithful God. We see this, right? So she's reading the Psalms and suddenly she's hit, right? And her heart is inflamed with the love of God, and so a spiritual consolation is given. Or again, a man has been worried about a difficult situation to be faced at work this day. He has faced it, and matters have gone well. The experience reveals to him afresh that the infinite God knows and loves him. As he drives home, his heart expands in a happy sense of love for the God who is so close to him in time of need. And I think these two examples are good insofar as there's this experience of just a keen awareness of God's presence and how the heart can become inflamed with love and gratitude for God. Just some examples of spiritual consolation, and we'll talk about more examples next time.